Well, good evening. Welcome to the Sports and Rugby League, the last tackle. As ever, 6 o'clock on a Wednesday night. Brilliant to have you with us, and alongside me in the studio, Andrew Henderson and Danica Prim. Loads to get through, guys, as ever. We'll start at the obvious place, which is international weekend just gone. England men and women in action. We'll start with the women in chronological order. 42-0 win over France. Comfortable on the score sheet, but time together for a team that's only been twice out since the World Cup.
Yeah, and I think that's the key thing, that the score reflects, that cliche thing, the score doesn't really reflect the game. A few debutantes in there, a few people that, are out injured, and the girls haven't been in camp for a long time. They've been training a lot more than we used to do, but that time in camp together is crucial because a lot of the girls don't know how it feels because you don't get it often. But, it's nice to see some of the girls that maybe haven't been sparkling in the Super League step up, like Amy Hardcastle. She's been quite quiet this season, but on the international stage, she comes into her own. So there's some nice elements to take from it, but I think there's a lot of questions still to be asked about where the standard is at the minute.
And 5 debutants in the squad. Obviously, some players in the NRLW that didn't feature, but it's a very different looking squad to the one that was in that last World Cup. How kind of important is this period for the bigger challenges that are ahead?
Well, firstly, it's massive. They need to find that half-back pairing. Georgia's gone over to the NRLW, so she's not available for these kind of small internationals. There's the debutant Izzy Rowe from Wigan. Maybe, she needs a little bit more time in the Super League to progress before she gets to the big stage. She did a job really, but I think they were slightly weaker on that left edge. And to see the likes of Georgia Hetherington, I think she's been pushing to be in that squad for quite a few seasons, but has been overshadowed by the likes of Tara Jane Stanley, who is phenomenal but out injured. So there's a bit of both there. Chance for some people that deserve to be in there to step up. We still need to find that half-back pairing. We have to secure it and we have to work with it for a few test matches before we can put it against Australia.
You mentioned earlier, you referenced earlier the kind of standard, and there's absolutely no doubt that the Betfred Women's Super League is on a real upward trajectory. Let's not kid ourselves, the NRLW is professional and they are a few years ahead. It's a difficult one, this, because you've got to kind of play these games to get to where you want to go, and you look at that scoreline and think it was a bit of a waste, but this is all part of the journey, isn't it?
Yeah, I think if you look at it, first and foremost, getting the girls together in camp, getting them, flying out, the whole pressure of playing for England, whether it's France, whether it's Australia, a lot of these girls, the pressure of playing for England, putting on that jersey and singing the national anthem, it's getting those little things. The more regularly you can do that, the more natural it becomes. Like, obviously, it's always going to be a special moment for it, but it's overwhelming when you first do it or when you haven't done it for a long time. But there's a big step between the North and Southern Hemisphere, and I think at the minute we're sliding away. I thought we'd be closing the gap a little bit, but after looking at the Origin last week, it is a step away, but the girls can see that. Having more of our girls go out there, there's hits, hit and miss. People don't want to lose the girls from the Super League, but equally, they're going to be better for going over and playing in the NRLW. So the more they can do that, then come back and play international, the better the game will be.
Yeah, and a lot of these things are very similar to what we'll say about the men's game in a bit, but
Sure.
You'll know as a coach and obviously a player yourself, being involved in international football, there is that kind of duality to playing competitive games, but also getting time together that's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm just going back to referencing the women's game, and I don't disagree with what Danica's saying there. That obviously the Southern Hemisphere is looking a lot stronger at the moment in terms of that, in terms of the competition and also the international structure. But we have made progression, haven't we? When you look at the women's game, the progression of where it started to where it is now. I think we're seeing a lot more competitive Betfred Women's Super League competition. I think the gap is narrowing with more teams. So, they are developing players. There's more finance and infrastructure within those clubs now, which are progressing players. However, we still have a long way to go to get us up to that international standard, which is key. But
And that's it. You just go back the weekend before, Wales have just qualified for the World Cup. We're getting more teams in the competition. England have played Wales, but it just means the game is growing, it's developing, there's more teams coming on board. They played the Netherlands, they've got Ireland and everything like that. There are teams coming through, it's just developing the strength of that, isn't it?
Yeah, we just don't have the finances or the resource that our Southern Hemisphere counterparts have at the moment, but the game is progressing and we're working within those parameters as best we can. But I do agree, back to your point there, Lewis, that it's really important that we create opportunities in the international game and in the international window to allow players to experience that. So, albeit playing France on the weekend for the women's 42-0 victory. It was probably a scrappy affair at times, but what a great experience for those women to come together, experience life in the camp, and hopefully that will help prepare them for future contests.
Loads to unpick, but let's be frank, you should always celebrate a 42-0 win in any circumstances. We mentioned, you've mentioned Amy Hardcastle, 5 debutants in that squad as well. Let's hear from Amy and one of those debutants, Anna Davies.
Anna, debut for England, how was that?
Yeah, really good. Yeah, really happy. I made one thing I was going to do and make sure I enjoyed it. And yeah, it felt really, really calm. So. Yeah, I didn't want it to finish. And normally you get to 18, you're like, I don't want to finish, so.
Brilliant, well done. Thank you. Thank you very much. Hey mate, massive victory against France, how was that?
Really good, they've definitely improved from last year, but do you know what? Still picked a quality team today. For all them debuts, you wouldn't have even known, and they stood up today, and I'm really proud of the girls, and I'm proud of the whole team.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
42-0 win over France for the women, the men in action as well. And again, a very similar conversation as we just said, 48 points to 8. Made to work for it, especially in the first 10, 20 minutes. It's a similar sentiment, isn't it, Hendo? A valuable time for the players to experience an international environment. More debutants in there. Players that may be putting their hand up for a spot in that Samoa shirt, shirt against Samoa.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we need to have this international window, don't we? We need an opportunity mid-season to get players together and experience the preparation that's needed to go into either a series or into a camp scenario. So once again, I think England used this as an opportunity to have a look at some other players in other positions. You could argue it was probably a combination of an England Knights team and an England team, so to speak. But again, great opportunity for those players that have gone to represent their country, got the experience of being in camp, and come up against a stubborn French team, which did challenge them on occasions. I think we can all agree it was a scrappy affair at times and a bit of a slow start for England, but once they got into their rhythm and found their groove, they showed some encouraging signs. Notably, obviously Welsby with 2 tries, Nicholson with 2 tries, Mikey Lewis had some nice touches when he came on. But great to see some young players like Sam Wood and Elliot Minchella and the likes, getting the opportunity to represent England as well on the day.
Yeah, a couple of names you mentioned that I just want to talk about the spine in particular. Shaun Wane obviously looking further ahead to Samoa,
Sure.
An Ashes tour that's penciled in, World Cups on the horizon. Welsby, Williams, Harry Smith, Mikey Lewis, 4 players straight away who you think are going to be part of this England team 3, 4, possibly more years down the time. Maybe less so George Williams, but certainly Welsby, Mikey Lewis, Harry Smith. It's worthwhile just getting those guys in a room and getting themselves to know each other, because that is such an important part of any team, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Your spine is, it's critical, really. And again, the more you can get those players playing together and having more time together to build those combinations and ultimately build that trust within one another as well, and that understanding, it's huge. So, I agree. I think, it's exciting for England in that respect, that we've got players of the calibre of Jack Welsby, Harry Smith, Mikey Lewis, that are lighting up Super League at the moment at competition level, but I've got a bright future ahead of them for England with a number of years to come.
Well, let's get some reaction from that win for the England men's team as well, and hear from Ash Handley.
Ash, tough week, but got the win in the end. How was that today?
Yeah, I think the game were maybe a reflection of the week. It's pretty difficult, the travel and everything like that, but the boys dug deep, and in the end we had some good players and nailed some players and got there in the end with the result.
And a couple of debutants made the debut today. What was that performance for them like?
Yeah, I thought they played really well. Obviously I was in that position this time last year, and it's a really special occasion playing for your country, and I'm really proud of them boys and I hope they enjoy it tonight.
And you can build from that performance onto Samoa at the end of the year?
Yeah, definitely. Like I say, it was a little bit scrappy in parts. I'm sure we'll take a lot from that and try to focus on that and try and put a full performance together moving forward.
Yeah, and a comfortable win for the men's team as well. And like I said earlier, I don't want to diminish 2 40-plus point wins, because in any circumstances you should celebrate those things. We can't sit here on a rugby league panel show like this and kind of not talk about some of the discourse as well, that's especially on social media online, about the attendance of this game, the profile of it, international rugby league in general. And it's we've talked about it before we came on air. It's a really difficult problem to solve, isn't it, in the current climate?
Well, you can't do right for doing wrong in the sense that we need more tests, but they're not big enough, or we need more tests and not getting the crowd in, or we're not promoting it enough. You can't really win, so there isn't an answer. Well, I don't have an answer. I don't have a clue about what you do about it, because you need these guys need, and the girls need the time in camp together, and they need to put on a test. Is France the best test? No, but where else do we go in the Northern Hemisphere for such a short space of time that's going to get a similar test? Particularly the men, there were some points in there that were a little bit scratchy, so they have got things that they can take from it. The women's game, again, great win, but it wasn't probably a polished performance that you want to see. But then how do you get people over? Has it been advertised long enough so people can get tickets to get themselves over to France? Where's the fine line? Like, I don't know what you do about it.
Loads of different suggestions have come up, Hendo. One that we kind of keep coming back to is this exiles concept, Combined Nations.
Yep.
I know you've been involved in it.
Absolutely.
There's certainly merits to it. We need to get Scotland out more. We need to get Ireland out more. Wales out more. Absolutely. France again. From an England perspective, almost the best thing that they can do is go and beat Samoa. They've beaten Tonga in a series. Go and have a real good crack at the Ashes tour next year, and that in itself kind of just raises the profile of international rugby league as a whole, doesn't it?
Yeah, yes, it does. But look, I think we've just got to be honest here. The reality that we have in front of us is finance, resource. We don't have the financial power. We don't have the resource available, and ultimately, the game is only played professionally, and where players get paid in effectively 4 countries, Australia, New Zealand, England and France. And ultimately, a lot of the international nations, are reliant on potentially some heritage players, etc., which as the years go by, those players are going to be falling away because all of a sudden it's great-grandparents that they won't qualify. So until we can raise more finances to obviously invest in countries and develop countries and rugby league further, it's going to be really, really hard for us to have a strong international game. I think you've also got to look at the International Rugby League Federation. Is that currently a full-time operation where you've got full-time board members, then you've got people sitting underneath that to really look at coming up with strategies and systems and structures to really grow the international game? I argue we probably don't have that at the moment. So there's a number of factors for me, Lewis, for us to improve the international game. We need to get a full-time operation at international board level. We then need to invest or find ways of generating more income to invest in, and I guess, tier 2 nations to help grow them, to make them stronger and more competitive. We've got to look at how do we come up with more fixtures within the game. Maybe one of those suggestions is at club level, we play less games at club level and allow us a 4-week window mid-season where we could actually get squads into camps that can then train for a number of weeks, create sort of maybe a 3-way tournament. For England, it might be against a Combined Nations as well as maybe a Celtic Nations and have like a 3-way round robin competition. I don't know. Is there ways of getting teams over mid-season from the other side of the world? But again, it comes down to finance, resource, facilities. There's so many things and factors at play here, and at the moment we're not there. And that's the reality. You look at our Southern Hemisphere counterparts, there's a lot more finance and resource going into the Pacific Islands, going into obviously the Australian game, the New Zealand game, which allows them then to be able to not only put on competitive fixtures, but be able to market it, the commercial revenue going in, and the structure and the infrastructure they have there as well creates more, again, meaningful games, but also games that are marketed well and generating interest and finances. So, we've got a long way to go for me.
Yeah, it's a debate that's going to rumble on and on for quite a while, I think. Something that is absolutely not up for debate, though, is that we've got 2 belting internationals on the menu at the end of the season. England versus Samoa. The revenge mission is on.
The Civetao includes the words, "My strength is at its peak." You would not deny them that, would you?
Let's go.
What a ball! Brilliant ball! Domion's on his way! Absolutely spectacular! Because Luhai's dancing now! Oh, he's found the gap! Puts it back on the inside. Paolo spins it away. Luhai bats it on. Brighton will finish. That is incredible! Flags flying of these 2 nations all around the stadium. Forwards through the first line, and through the second, and through the third, and England on the try. All eyes up rugby league from Ling Yisha.
Maybe this is the dish.
That's served cold.
Yeah, that will be absolutely fantastic. That's in October, but this Saturday, live and exclusive on the Sportsman, we've got more rugby league on the way, and it is an absolute belter from the Betfred Women's Super League. Leeds Rhinos against St Helens, a Betfred Challenge Cup final rematch at Emerald Headingley Stadium. Danica, you're going to be in the commentary box with me. This isn't a game that takes much selling at all, is it?
No, not at all. And I think, we've had the Challenge Cup where Leeds lost out. The week before that, they were playing, St Helens at Totally Wicked. They've only had one league game in between, plus the big break for Origin and for the internationals. So essentially, in terms of the three teams meeting up, there's been 4 games, and it's going to be the third time they've met in that four games. So it's huge. Leeds have been on the losing side twice, so maybe third time lucky. I used to play on the stats that, Leeds had never lost at Totally Wicked Stadium until the week before the Challenge Cup. Then I thought Wembley would be the revenge match and they'd finally take it. Saints were just too strong. I think Leeds were uncharacteristically poor at Wembley, which is the wrong time, to have your dip in the season. So I think there's a couple of injuries, there's a couple of reasons why Lowe's would have worked really hard, and this now is kind of the pinnacle of where they've kind of missed out on the last 2 games, so it's going to be huge. And the girls have spent a lot of time together, like the girls in camp, both teams making up a lot of the England squad, so they'll have come back from being together, having that, what should have been top-class coaching level, and there's no better place to do it for Leeds than at Headingley, so it's going to be huge.
And we talk, typically the women's game about the kind of big 3, St Helens, Leeds, York, but actually in the context, this is a massive game in the context of the table. Leeds are at the top, Wigan next to them on level points, St Helens and York 2 points back, they've got games in hand. Warrington are only 2 points back from that, so actually that playoff race, this is huge.
This is the biggest it's ever been. And what's the beauty about Wigan as well is Dennis Betts has done a great job, he's gone in there. They are fighting now for that top 3, and I think, unfortunately for the York Valkyrie, when Wigan and York play each other with York's current injury problem, Wigan could probably do a really good job and carry on pushing. And normally it comes down to point difference. Wigan put 100 points past the team, so therefore points difference-wise, they've got loads of stack up behind them. So it is really close, it is really tight, and I think we can't discourage the fact that Wigan could probably pick one of the top 3 and work their way into that now. So, you go back to the international, we talked about where England might not be where they need to be. However, it's proven in the Super League that we've progressed loads because it's not just 1 or 2 teams. It's 4, potentially 5 that are fighting for that top spot.
Hendo, you're obviously part of a York organisation that have taken the women's game, really seriously, been one of the real pioneers of it in the last couple of years. Sure. You've been part of our coverage as well on the Sportsman for a while. We would not have been talking about a game like this with this level of kind of intrigue and anticipation even 2 years ago.
Yeah, agree. No, look, I think when we spoke about it earlier in the conversations today, in discussions today, that the women's game has progressed. The infrastructure, the finance, the resource, the exposure of the game has all increased in recent years. And like I said, it's testament to the sponsors, Betfred, but also to everybody involved in the women's game. We now have, like you said, you've just highlighted there, Lewis. There's 5 clubs in the mix of this year. Traditionally it was all about the big 2. Then it's become the big 3. Now we've got potentially 5 clubs in the mix and now challenging for honours. So, it just shows the progression now of clubs, and the fact that clubs are now treating it more seriously too, and seeing the positive impact that the women's game can have on rugby league. Because we are such an inclusive sport, and we offer so many opportunities at so many levels and in so many different shapes, ways and forms of the game. And it's testament to those who are involved in the women's game that we're now seeing, contests like this are going to be shown live again on the Sportsman, but obviously have a competition where it's going to be an exciting end of the season. It's great.
Yeah, exciting end of the season. I think we'll use that phrase a lot. We've spoken about how close the Women's Super League is. We'll touch on how close the men's is, I'm sure, when we get into that. But just want to talk about the Championship as well, Hendo, because obviously a competition really well, your time at London and now with York. And that league table is a bit insane. There's 2 points between 12th and 6th, and the ramifications of what those 2 points mean is huge.
Yeah, huge. It's such a competitive competition. It really, well, you've just said it there, Lewis. There's 2 points between essentially being in the playoffs or actually being in that playoff game where you play the winner from League One. If you finish 12th this year in the Championship, because some of the viewers may not be aware that's all been restructured, you finish 12th in the Championship this year, you have to play the winner of the League One playoff competition. So, you're literally in with a threat of relegation at that stake. But ultimately you win a game and you're in the top 6 and vying for a chance to play in the playoffs and win a grand final. So, it just shows you the competition in the Championship. It's very well balanced. A lot of teams possess a clutch of really good quality players, and again, there's some really quality teams out there, and it's highly competitive.
But I think there's the difference, isn't there? That you've got results in the Championship that you didn't expect. York beating Featherstone, and York, on the Bradford one as well. There's games that are going either way. It's not just you're not expecting the result anymore because
you don't know. Each week you don't know.
There's a really interesting mix in that league as well of kind of clubs that are emerging, and I very much put York in that bracket.
Yep.
Toulouse have obviously had some time in Super League. They're coming through, but also look at some of the other names. Bradford seem to be, maybe it's early days, but at the beginning of a bit of a resurgence. Look what Widnes are doing this year. Sheffield, with the budget available to them, just continue to do well. There's traditional clubs in there that just look like they're at the kind of upward tick again.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'd like to think that the IMG scenario has played a positive part in that because clubs have now really took a more step back and look at their overall, not just the performance, on-field performance of the team. They're looking at how can we create ways of making our clubs better, providing better services and looking at ways of trying to generate more interest, etc. And I think there has been created this year in the Championship. There's a lot of interest in the Championship this year. Most games have been well attended. Like you said, it's an exciting competition. You've hit the nail on the head there, Danica. Each week you don't know who is going to win. You're going, actually, I expect that result this week. But then all of a sudden you'll see the results on Monday morning and go, how has that happened? Like, how have they beat them away? Or how's that? You just don't know. And it's exciting. It's great. I'd hate to be a betting man.
We spend a lot of time, as rugby league fans seem to be inclined to do, talking about a lot of off-the-field stuff and the kind of trajectory of the game. And the IMG thing has kind of fed into that because there's all this algorithm-based stuff as well. But I just want to kind of focus on one point before we move on here. The Super League table is as tight as perhaps I can remember it being. The men's Super League table is as tight as I can remember it being for a long time. We've just spoken about the playoff race and the women's Super League chase. The Championship, we've just mentioned, is hugely tight and competitive and entertaining. In Betfred League One, we've got a neck-and-neck title race between Oldham and Keighley. The wheelchair competition's just kicked off, but always throws up huge drama. You cannot question, as a product, rugby league at the moment is producing the goods on the field.
Agreed?
Yeah, absolutely. And is it the IMG structure? Are people thinking more? Has something taken a turn somewhere else? But it's not just exciting. It's the the interest that you need. It's the intensity. It's the drama. It's the entertainment. That the fans need as well to come and watch and to get involved as well. It is more than, like you just mentioned, it's more than what's on the field now, which is great because it always has been. But that is a product rather than just it being a game of rugby. It's now a product, and I think. Is that the reason it's got so tight? Is it because we are inclusive, because we've gone across all forms of rugby league and everyone's involved, so therefore the clubs are wanting to produce wheelchair teams, women's teams, PDRL, LDRL, that's the product of it, isn't it? Is it that? Is it interest? But is it IMG? But I think it's wicked at the minute. We love the sport anyway, we'd speak about it day and night, but I think it's an exciting time at the minute.
Yeah, what an end to the season. Last couple of months of the season we've got still got Magic Weekend on the horizon as well, and then playoffs, of course, across all the competitions and those grand finals on the horizon, and we will cover every inch of it right here on The Sportsman.
You're watching The Sportsman Rugby League. Subscribe for weekly shows, exclusive content and live games.
Yeah, so Betfred Super League returns after the international break this weekend, and what a menu of games we've got. It starts off with an absolute belter. Wigan versus Lee Hendo, Battle of the Borough. It doesn't need a huge amount of selling. Again, two teams that are going to get stuck into each other. Wigan, of course, at the top of the table, but Lee would love to disrupt that.
Yeah, look, I think this is an exciting game this weekend. Again, both teams are well supported. both are vocal, passionate, and I think it's going to be a great contest. I think Lee are desperate. They need a result this week. If they want to have a genuine chance to still push it for those playoffs, they're going to need to get a result this weekend. But obviously Wigan, the form that they're in, I don't see them slowing down anytime soon either. So I think Wigan will probably nick it at home, but I think it's going to be a tight contest, that's for sure.
Lee need to stay in the fight for the playoffs, so this is a big game for them as well.
Yeah, and I think we saw Lee kind of go on a bit of a roll. They had a bit of success, and it goes. And this break, so to speak, will either make or break them. I think because momentum is gained. Wigan don't need momentum. Wigan just seem to walk onto a field and be able to do it. But I think Wigan at home are difficult to beat. Anybody in that league. When Wigan get at home and they get the people behind them, that's their fortress, isn't it? And they are a bit formidable there. So I think that we're going to... I don't think it's going to be close. I think we're going to come out firing and be like, you've missed us, guys, here we are.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see that one. A local derby, DW will be rocking, I'm sure. Big night for St Helens as well. Obviously that defeat against Salford before the break, Hendo, one that would have kind of just maybe knocked them off kilter a little bit. Yeah. Maybe in that respect the break came at the right time, and obviously there are players involved with England, but an opportunity to just reset a little bit before they take on Cass. Yeah,
look, it's an interesting game, this one, Lewis, for a couple of reasons. Like you said, I think Saints, been humbled there against Salford just before the international break. I think, they're a very professional organisation, a professional setup there. I think the mindset will be that we have to bounce back this week, and they'll be very, very determined to deliver a strong and good performance. But we've seen some encouraging signs from Casford in recent weeks. They've pushed a couple of the top teams there in Hull KR and obviously Wigan in recent weeks. So, I think they go to St Helens with no pressure, no expectation to get a result. They know they're going to be in for a tough assignment, that's for sure. But I think they can play with a bit of freedom this week, and I think they can take a little bit of confidence and a little bit of heart from the way they've actually defended the last 2 weeks, not conceding a lot of points, really competing for one another. And I think they'll feel the longer they're in the contest, they'll have a chance of nicking it. St Helens on the flip side, like I said, I think will be very determined to deliver a strong performance at home, get back to winning ways. I do feel that Saints will have a little bit too much firepower on the night to get the result.
Warrington Huddersfield's an interesting one because, and again, we talk about maybe the break coming at the right time for St Helens. I think possibly the same could be said for Warrington. Almost felt like they just needed that break to kind of refuel from the Challenge Cup final defeat, and that disappointment can take a while to get over. They play a Huddersfield team that, much like Lee, kind of need a result to stay in touch with the playoffs. Yeah,
well, I think, like you say, like the Warrington didn't bounce back, did they, from Wembley? But I think that they've got it in their locker, so to speak, that they've got it on the field. The names speak for themselves when you put out a Warrington team, that you've got to get it there. You just had to readjust somehow or take the break or do whatever. But is the pressure more on Huddersfield this week than Warrington? Who's recovered from the break more? Warrington can kind of probably take another loss in the sense of table position, whereas Huddersfield have to go and kind of win to keep ticking away. So it's a tough one because you want, obviously, nobody's ever going to go into a game to want to lose, but I think the pressure's more on Huddersfield, and to go to Warrington is a difficult place to go. So Warrington just need to use the break wisely, kind of put Wembley into the back room, close the box on that, and they're going ahead back in the league. The league is now the focus, isn't it? And
then we move into Saturday. Leeds Rhinos in action just after our live game on the Sportsman, of course, in the Women's Super League. They play London Broncos. Hendo, obviously a club that will be very close to your heart. Absolutely doing it tough at the moment. Yeah. We know the discourse of it. An unbelievable achievement to get to this point. I guess the concern is Leeds, again before the international break, just showed a little bit of bounce back, didn't they? Obviously, a change in coaching staff, a lot of emotion around that game against Leeds, the Rob Burrow stuff, but seemed to spur them on to one of their better performances this season.
Absolutely, and I think when you look at that Leeds roster, there's still a lot of quality players in that team. You could argue as a team collectively they've not been playing as well as they'd hoped for, and haven't been as consistent, I guess, over the course of the Super League season. But there were certainly some encouraging signs in that performance. I don't think they needed any more motivation that night, really. Let's be brutally honest. So it would have been disappointing if they hadn't have delivered a performance. The fact that they did and got a result result and earned a result was a credit to them and credit to the organisation. But I don't see any hiccups here against London at home. I feel that they'll certainly go into this game confident of getting a result. The key for me will be the performance level. I think they'll beat London. But I think what certainly Chev Walker and the rest of the coaching team there will be wanting is a really good performance. So I think they'll be confident of getting a result on the day, but they won't want it to be scrappy. They want to be able to build off the foundation that was put in place the week before, and obviously get a good performance and get a good result on the back of that.
Well, it's a big question about the players, isn't it? We've had this big change in coaching staff and people have been wanting Rowan out for ages or whatever. But what I think you've actually found is that, like you said, you talk about the calibre of players in that team who haven't been performing, who haven't been stepping up. We know that people can play better and there's a lot more for them to come. So now I think, like you say, Chev Walker's great and he's brought through a lot of the academy players anyway. So the youth is in good hands. Can the experience now step up and not play for the emotion, but actually play on the field at home against a team they should be beating? But let's not forget, they lost to Hull FC, not so long ago. So it's only a week difference. Yes, they've had the week off, so it's consistency now for Leeds. Is it the players? Is it the coaching? What worked last week or the other Friday, and put it into this weekend?
Moving on to Hull KR versus Catalan Dragons, and Hull KR are obviously going great guns right at the top, and a really great team to watch as well. And a Catalans team who are kind of in that bracket of you feel like they need a win, Danica.
Yeah, well, I think this is the game of the weekend for me, in the sense that love Hull KR, they're going really well, but Catalan have been uncharacteristic. They need a response. Yeah, we're going to talk about this break every single time because they've all had a chance to A, take a break, B, go recoup and be with the families and take a break from rugby if that's what they needed, but also be in camp together a little bit longer to right some wrongs. And like I say, Catalan need a response. Going to Hull KR is probably the most difficult place to go to create that response, but I think there's two teams here that can put on a real good battle of attrition, and I'm going to say Hull KR will probably come out on top just because it's at Craven Park, but I think this weekend will be the time that Catalan step back up. Yeah,
well, this is going to be. I'm with you, Danica. This is the tie of the round for me, and it's a massive game for the Catalan Dragons. They really need a result this weekend to keep, for me to stay in that top six for starters, because Leeds are nipping at the heels now, as we know, and if we look at probably Catalan's form in the last 6 to 8 weeks, they haven't had too many results in that period. So I think it's an important fixture, and the game is going to be won or lost in the ruck area. Hull KR, they have the most dummy half runs in the competition, so that tells me that obviously Jez Litton and Matt Parcell, any quick play the ball, they're going to get out and exploit that. They've also got the most offloads in the competition too of Hull KR, so they're going to create a lot of disruption around that ruck area, looking to promote the ball and looking to get on the front foot with quick play the ball. So for me, the Catalans have got a big job around that ruck area defensively this week. If they manage that and then can obviously exploit some of Hull KR's weaknesses, then they've got a real chance of getting the result. But it's going to be a great game there. Yeah, it should be a belter, that one. And then rounding off the weekend, Salford Red Devils versus Hull FC, and this is an interesting one. There's loads of narratives of it. Obviously, the big one, Paul Rowley turned down the Hull FC job earlier in the season. You have to say, the way his Salford team have been going, that he made a good decision staying there, Hendo. But can they keep that up again? Maybe the break came at the wrong time for them after that, win against Warrington and St Helens. Well, look, I think Salford have been brilliant, haven't they, this season? Let's be honest. They're playing some great rugby league football. You can sense there's a real togetherness and there's real clarity within their team. They all understand their roles. They're certainly competing hard for one another, and there's certainly been some certain individuals within that team I think have really performed extremely well. Notably Mark Sneyd, who I think's in some sensational form at the moment. But the challenge now is, like you said, they've took some big scalps this year. The challenge is now, can they compete against teams that are at the lower end of the table, because they have come unstuck a couple of times this year, haven't they, by teams at the lower end of the table. So that's the challenge for Salford this week, is can they continue to raise the bar? Can they get that consistency of performance that we've seen them produce against some of the bigger names and some of the bigger scalps that they've managed to take against, I'm not saying Hull FC are a lower opposition, but currently as they stand, they're not performing well, they've not been consistent. This is a big test for Salford. But ultimately, Mark Sneyd for me will be at the hub of any sort of creative spark. And I think if Hull FC can manage Mark Sneyd this weekend and do a job on him and certainly nullify the kick threat, because it said their kicking game creates a lot of opportunities, both long and short. They may have a sneaky chance there, because I believe there's some encouraging signs from Hull SC in recent weeks as well. So it's going to make for a good contest, but big challenge for Salford, but equally a big challenge for Hull FC too.
Yeah, 6 games stacked with storylines and narrative. Should be a belting weekend. Great to have the Betfred Super League back after a week off. That is all we've got time for, so thank you both for joining us. Make sure you tune in on Saturday. Join me and Danica at Headingley Stadium. Leeds Rhinos against St Helens in the Betfred Women's Super League. Should be an absolutely fantastic game as part of a really, really good weekend of rugby league. We'll see you then.